I ran this crowdfunding platform for 8 years. We had hundreds of thousands of campaigns. I used to coach people that wrote the book on crowdfunding. The strategies in crowdfunding and raising a pre-seed fund are almost identical. It's about creating momentum, and perception is reality. And so what I've seen is the founders that have really good processes, they're the ones who raise, irrespective of the underlying value of the company, irrespective of the narrative. The people with the best process do the best. It was the same way with crowdfunding. We would coach people on the process all the time. Everyone spends 90% of their time on their deck and their story and no time on their process. And so it's not something founders, it's not on the radar really. And the ones that have a killer process, they raise killer rounds. So I try to help them on their process.
Ethan, welcome to the Slice Pod, where we uncover the stories of fresh emerging managers across the early stage venture landscape. You're the founder and general partner of Outside VC, a $6.5 million fund investing 100 to 250 checks into outsiders, which we'll get to talk about in less than a minute. But before we get there, and before we talk about your upcoming fund as well, because I know you're fully deployed on this one, let's begin where we always do, which is by asking, how did we get here? Was this always the plan to raise your own fund? Did you know from law school back in the days?
I didn't think I was going to be an entrepreneur. I took a random entrepreneurship class in college, almost started a hostel out of college with my buddies, chickened out. They did phenomenally well, so starting a hostel in Panama that I didn't do with them, and ended up going to law school and realizing in law school that everyone was better than me. I was sitting in law school selling banana bread in a banana costume in our law school library while everyone was studying for finals. Everyone thought I was crazy, and I thought everyone else was crazy. And I thought, maybe I'm not going to be a lawyer. There was an idea I had for a company at the time. It wasn't cool to be a founder in 2007. It took me a year to start. A friend introduced me to this gal starting the same thing. We were doing a crowdfunding platform. And back then, there was no term crowdfunding. We clicked immediately. She was the only person that got what I was talking about, and I was the only person that got what she was talking about. I packed up a suitcase and moved to Chicago from LA. We started a company together. I thought it'd be there for 3 months and we'd do it remotely, 15 years before remote was the thing. And it turned out that was very hard. I stayed in Chicago for the next 8 years, and we built a company and got to help pioneer crowdfunding in those early days. I call myself an accidental entrepreneur. My path to venture was a little bit similar. I ran that company for 8 years. David Cohen, founder of Techstars, was one of our angel investors. And after 8 years, Facebook killed our company and built the same thing. It was a brutal ending to 8 years of work. He said, why don't you join Techstars? And my wife and I said, I need a break from startups for a minute because there's some brain damage from 8 years and some trauma and all sorts of things. So we went into South America and traveled for 4.5 months, just doing all the things that you can't do when you're doing a startup. Came back to LA, and randomly they're launching Techstars LA at that time. So I ended up launching Techstars LA with Anna Barber in 2017 and ended up loving it. Went on to launch Techstars in Denver and loved it. I just loved it so much that I fell into it, but was having so much fun doing it that I needed to do it on my own. I'm not a good rule follower, and I'm not long at working at other companies. I don't think any venture firm would ever hire me. I need to start my own.
You were at Techstars for a while, right?
Techstars was an exception because they knew me. David Cohen knew me ahead of time, but like any sane venture capitalist would not have hired me. I tried applying for jobs just to see what was out there. And I resoundingly heard no many times. I didn't have a puffy vest, and I just wasn't the type they were looking for.
We see that quite a bit. You have to have a degree of entrepreneurial spirit, even though you didn't think you had it selling banana bread in the library, clearly.
Yeah.
This was the A days of the accelerators, 500 startups, fierce competition, Y Combinator, fierce competition in the Valley, across the world, global expansion, global domination. I do remember it helped catalyze what is today's generation of founders and startup operators. What was the moment you knew it was the right time to branch out on your own? Changed? Was it a lack of excitement? Was it the lack of luster from these big brands becoming too mainstream?
That was a great question. It was fiercely competitive. My last program in Techstars in 2020, I I'd never lost a company that I'd gone after and tried to pull into the program. And I was very competitive and always winning companies over. And there's one company I didn't win over. I had no intention of leaving Techstars. I loved it. My job was so fun. It's like VC, but also like summer camp. My Techstars company founders just from 2020, we had a reunion in 2025 in the mountains. He sent a video of us from 2020 going around in a circle, chanting crazy stuff, all sober. Entrepreneurs are just crazy. It was the most fun thing ever. I had no intentions of quitting. I left because I couldn't recruit this company in, and they recruited me out. They said, hey, like, I'm not going to join Techstars, but will you join as our COO? With my own company, I'd never got it across the line. We got killed by Facebook in year 8. I thought, is there one last chance to do something big? I said, sure, I'll join you as COO. We'll raise this pre-seed round and build this company. I left. We raised the pre-seed round. I texted my old investors. Raising capital later on as a second-time founder, a lot easier. First time took 2.5 years. The second time took 6 text messages. We raised this round and realized I wasn't a good fit with him. Crazy realization. My wife was pregnant. Told Techstars I was leaving, and I had a month left to figure out before no income and a very pregnant wife. I ended up joining one of my portfolio companies, and I told him in the beginning, I said, hey, I'm going to be here about a year because I'm going to start a fund. I'm going to help you out for a year. I love the founder. He's an LP in my fund now. He's a great friend, but I'm going to be here for a year because I really love doing this. I love being an investor. I got caught up in trying to start one more company, but the thing I loved about being an investor was I have a KPI, portfolio companies. Do I get invited to the founder weddings? And you get to have this incredible relationship with these founders that lasts for decades. I'm still incredibly close with the person who bet on me first. Called him up last week for advice on kids schooling and family stuff. That was 15 years ago. I love that. And getting to have that relationship with smart, talented people for the next 15, 20 years. I really like investing. And like I said, no one in the right mind was ever going to hire me. I'm a founder at heart. So if I wasn't starting a product company, I wanted to start a company and do it my own way. Venture was the area I was doing that in. I've got to do that at Outside VC.
I love it. You started Outside VC in 2022, right?
Yeah.
That was a time where there was a lot of operators jumping ships and building a fund, and then market crashes all of a sudden.
Totally.
And you find yourself with a different target in mind and having to navigate through the maze of an institutional fundraise, first-time manager, great background, really understand Techstars, excellent deal flow, operator, can add value, and so on. What was the competitive landscape from a fundraising perspective and capital deployment over the course of this first fund?
Fundraising is a humbling sport. No one ever says, oh, that was easy, right? Like, that last fundraise as a founder where I texted 6 people, 4 said yes, it was oversubscribed. That was easy. The first time I did it, it took 2 years. No one backed us at all. That's a big part of why I built Outside VC. I built it for outsiders, and there's an underserved market of outsiders who aren't getting funded. Anytime you're doing something for the first time, it's a kick in the teeth. You could go from a founder who can text a few people and get backed to a VC, and you're in a whole new sport, a whole new arena. You don't have the credibility of what you've done before. You're starting from zero. It was humbling. I knew it was going to be, but it was even more humbling than I thought. I started in April of 2022. And about a week before the market crashed, I picked a very bad time to go out there. I don't know what competition was like because I was raising from individuals I knew. We had 180 LPs in our fund. 150 of them were people I knew before then. Probably 10 of my Techstars founders or angel investors or angel portfolio CEOs that invested in it. Every boss that I ever worked with was investing in it. A lot of my former employees were investing. So it was all people that knew me and had worked with me, even if not in an investor's capacity. It was a friends and family round. I went back to what I knew, which as a founder, I essentially crowdfunded the first fund. In part, that was strategic, and in part, that was out of necessity. So my plan had been from the very beginning to get to 99 LPs and add value add LPs to the fund, like operators and other VCs. But I also was maybe a little bit delusional in that I thought my minimum check for the first one would be $250K. And that quickly was like, oh, you're not going to do that. It became apparent quickly. It wasn't high net worth individuals. I called it a worth individual. Do you have a worth that is not negative? Do you want to participate? And the thing ended up strategic. And as we're at the end of Fund 1, it's proven valuable. It was an insane way to raise a fund. I'm getting checks from 30 plus top VCs, everyone from Better Tomorrow Ventures, Elizabeth at Hustle Fund, and Lee Jacobs at Long Journey. We have all these top VCs in the fund, and it's been fantastic for bilateral deal flow. We're in so many deals with all our LPs. I think co-invested in half our deals. It's been an incredible strategy. It panned out the way I hoped from a sourcing perspective. Our LPs help vet and win companies. It's been really value add. It was an insane way to raise capital, though. A lot of work. Honestly, halfway through, only $3 million. And between your first close and your final close, not a whole lot goes on in the middle. I wasn't sure I was going to figure out a way to feed my family. There was moments where you're just like, what did I get myself into here? But just kept pushing, and it all came together. It wasn't the amount that I was hoping to raise a $10 million fund in 9 months. I raised a $6.5 million fund, and it took me 18. It was a humbling experience, but it really turned out nicely. We have this amazing community now that has been so fun to build with, right? It's just like it's founders, operators, VCs. It's like interesting people who are, adding value at every turn.
More common of a story than one may think. You are the manager with the highest LP count we talked to, but not by that big of a margin. So there is a couple of you guys that are in the triple digits for sure. How do you keep a relationship at scale with the portfolio of 180 LPs and probably a deal flow of dozens of startups and a portfolio of founders and all of their teams and everything else? You're just one guy. How does that work?
I'm tired. That's the reality. It's hard. I try to be pretty thoughtful around communication. All my LPs, some of my advisors who I respect a ton are LPs in 50 plus funds. And I talked to so many of my friends who are managers, some emerging managers, some just managers. And they're like, no one reads our LP reports. No one reads our stuff. From the beginning, when I was a founder, I used to write these really quirky updates. And I saw early on that the only thing our investors responded to were the jokes or like the personal stuff. No one gives a shit about everything else. You can read it and it doesn't really mean anything. Is it an exit? No. Okay, cool. It doesn't mean a whole lot to people. It's nice to see it. People want to be entertained. My goal is to make it not boring. But instead of quarterly updates, I do a quarterly update, an annual review, and notes on the AGM. I also do monthly updates. The monthly updates are more newsletter than traditional LP reporting. Right. And then the monthly updates people love. And I was just talking to an LP today who's re-upped for a bigger check. And he's like, I love your updates. I love reading about your family. I love the weird stuff that you put in it. My biggest responses from my LP updates from the past year. So I send a monthly, and I was told never to send a monthly. That's too much information. I was like, no, I'm just going to do it differently. I sent a monthly update. My biggest two that people love the most. This one I just sent out. I wrote a tribute to my dad who passed away 30 years ago. I had another one that when Sam Altman was getting fired, I had a story of how I was texting with him in the midst of him getting fired, and we had this conversation back and forth. I don't know Sam Altman, which makes it even funnier. And the third one, I had just trolled one of my LPs about a story coming back from Tahoe snowboarding, and my friends and I saw a cow jumping over a cow, and he didn't see it. We've never let him live it down for the rest of his life. And I wrote a story about that. People love weird stuff, and they're along for the journey, and all the financial stuff is hard to read, especially if you're not a professional VC or LP. People are like, it looks like everything's going well. Like, it's hard. I don't really know because I work in law or some other space. I think you want to give people a reason to keep opening stuff. By being proactive, sending stuff out, instead of getting inbound from 180 LPs, how are things going? I send stuff out on the dot every single month. Then I have a day or two of responding. We also get so much of our deal flow from that update, right? So the idea for me has always been just be a person people want to work with. Stay top of mind, be a person that people want to enjoy being around and want to send deals to.
Let's talk about the quirkiness, especially the deal flow aspects of it. You're a smaller fund. You have an extremely wide base of LPs, which means that you get to do pretty much whatever you think it's right. You don't have a large anchor by which you have to run investments by every time you are considering to do one. And it sounds like your folks are giving you a lot of leeway because they trust you to make good choices and have sound judgment. What is that quirky founder, that weird idea, weird person that struggles to raise institutional capital that you think you have an edge in capturing before it becomes obvious to anybody else? How do you find this, and how do you make sure these are viable businesses, founders, or investments? Or maybe you leave it to the gods to figure it out.
I'll give you an example of a founder. We invested in through this fund, originally invested in 2020 in that Techstars class. It's a company called Heights Labs. The founders are both math professors. It's not a traditional career path for a founder. When they came and pitched, I loved them. I was like, holy crap. I saw like all sorts of things in these people that were, first of all, they were brilliant. They were writing algorithms that other math professors didn't think were possible. And my whole thought is that I look for people that are just like top 1% in something that they've done. I think where a lot of VCs go wrong is they're looking for a pattern and they have a narrow understanding of what exceptional can look like. So many people said, you're going to bet on professors? How are they going to run a business? They don't know how to do any of this stuff. My thought is they're writing algorithms no one else can write. I bet they can figure out Excel. I bet they can figure out payroll. I bet they can figure out these other things that dummies like me can figure out. That was the bet. They were pre-product at the time. 80% of these companies are going to zero anyway. What is the risk? Not betting on them. I think they are the types of people that can have asymmetric returns. It's been 5 years and they're crushing now. They had naysayers all along. Coinbase just reinvested in their company for the third time a couple days ago. And even now, and they've had no trouble raising in the past, and they had a little bit of trouble raising this time around. We put our max check in. Our LPs doubled that on an SPV. I sold my Facebook stock that I bought at 20 and that I 30x'd on personally, that I already 30x and it's not going to 30x again. These guys were just exceptional and people don't want to see it. I think that's true of so many founders. We have this idea of who is great and it's too narrow. I look for greatness. Have you done something in your life? I don't care how esoteric it is of humans in the world. It doesn't matter if it's in, balancing macaroni on, at what you're doing. I think you have the drive and willingness to push and take things all the way.
And now that you've deployed $6.5 million in this asset class of quirky founders, and you're in the process of raising your next fund, the firm is the same, the thesis is the same. Do your LPs understand the competitive edge you have on those narrow aperture funds you compete with? Is it part of the pitch? Is it why they invest? Or is it still a leap of faith in Ethan as a person?
Someone said this morning, I have an LP that said he's going to come in for probably 4x what he came in for last time. He's like, I'm in 15 funds. He said, I love the way you're doing everything because you're doing it different than everyone else. And I think this is going to lead to some pretty significant alpha. That's why I'm reinvesting. So I think the ones who are in a lot of funds see that. I have a lot of LPs this is the only fund they've ever invested in. They're a buddy and they have no idea. They're like, I see your updates. I really don't know. It's hard to know how things are going. I think the folks in a lot of funds see that this is different than a lot of the funds that they're in.
How do you scale this? Is it always going to be just you, maybe a little bit of help, or is the idea to build a firm?
Build the firm. I think it's ironic. The thing I was best at as a founder was being a leader and delegating. I delegated everything. I was like, I don't want to actually do any work and just bring in really amazing people around me and be a leader. I was really good at that as a founder. I've chosen a career path where I'm going to be an IC because I'm going to build out a firm, but it's never going to be a huge firm. We might have 5, 6, 7, 8 people, but it's always going to be just grinding. I love that part. It's so fun, but I've got 3 kids. I do work, family, and nature. Everything else gets cut out. At some point, you want to bring some of those things back. I don't want it to be me only. The reason I started with me only was because I was 40 and I've known that starting companies is usually timing. There's no shortage of interesting people to do this with, but timing is always the thing. Last year, I put an open call out to the public and we're bringing on a partner. I think the response was great. I had 10 of my LPs applied to be a partner, which was pretty cool. And bringing 2 people on, 2 of my LPs, not as partners, but as deep advisors. One has helped land 5 of the 6 climate deals we've done, and another who's just been super involved in so much of the things that we've done. And
is that where you think managers like you add the best value in terms of preparing people for their seed and Series A's. Having a large set of LPs is helpful, a big network to pass your
Yeah.
darlings onto.
Yeah, that was the idea of bringing all those people on. I didn't anticipate that I'd get deal flow from them, which has been an added benefit. They'd be more likely to invest in the companies we're investing in if they're getting to see them all the time. But yeah, it's both the network and the strategy, right? I ran this crowdfunding platform for 8 years. We had hundreds of thousands of campaigns. I used to coach people that wrote the book on crowdfunding. The strategies in crowdfunding and raising a pre-seed fund are almost identical. It's about creating momentum, and perception is reality. And so what I've seen is the founders that have really good processes, they're the ones who raise, irrespective of the underlying value of the company, under narrative. The people with the best process do the best. It was the same way with crowdfunding. We would coach people on the process all the time. Everyone spends 90% of the time on their deck and their story and no time on their process. And so it's not something founders, it's not on the radar really. And the ones that have a killer process, they raise killer rounds. So I try to help them on their process. I have a founder in my portfolio. He's built companies from 1 to 100, worked at top consulting firms, probably got an IQ of 140. He's never done 0 to 1. He's going through this Harvard accelerator thing right now and learning so much. High aptitude and skill, but doesn't have that knowledge. So we assume people have more knowledge than they actually do. If you haven't spent your life in startups, some of that is that what feels like common knowledge to a lot of folks is not common knowledge. He's sending me a WhatsApp this morning saying my open rates went from 5% to 40% because I'm in this accelerator thing right now. And we worked on the sequencing of my emails. He's like, holy shit, this is wild. And I'm like, yeah, it's cool. He's an incredibly high horsepower, high capable person. And so I think there's still a lot to learn. But I don't think the learning is the reason people should go through accelerators. I have 180 LPs. I can trace back 101 of them to Techstars. Half my class from when I went through Techstars in 2010 are LPs in my fund now. I have 10 founders I've invested in that are LPs in this fund. We have a company we just invested in, and one of the world's best accelerators offered them a spot. That person is late 30s with kids. I don't need a new network at this point in my life. In the same way, when I was 27 and I didn't know anyone in tech, it became my entire network. It changed my life trajectory. The reason it changes depending on where you are in your career. I tell folks when I was running Techstars, I said, don't do this because you think it's the fastest way to raise capital or change your company. We're going to help you do 12 months of work in 3 months. That's true for a lot of folks. Having been a lifelong fan of Techstars, you do accelerate a lot of the companies. But I don't think that's the reason to do it. I would tell people, we're going to sell you on the mentors. We're going to sell you on the investors, sell you on the stuff you learn. The real reason is your peers. This peer group you have going through an accelerator 3 months together and pushing each other in the most positive way, competitive and positive way. Those become your homies. Those become the people you were in the trenches with, bonded for life. I would tell people that. I said, look, there's an 80 to 90% Techstars or YC or Better Tomorrow Ventures or 500 is going to meaningfully improve your company. But there's 100% chance that it will improve your life as an individual. And whether that's with this company, your next company after that, you're going to build these relationships with people who lift you up.
You've invested in a wide variety of industries, from blockchain, fintech, AI. What are the verticals that you get most excited about?
This fund has been 80% fintech, 20% climate. AI is not a vertical, so AI is this horizontal layer, like a decent amount of AI. But that was fund one. For fund two, I'm thinking about, I just read James's article at NFX around the return of consumer AI. And I remember just 2 years ago being at this conference called Lobby where he was giving a talk, and we talked about it afterwards of like, AI, consumer is dead. And it has been dead for a decade. And it had been, right? All since like the last big platforms, consumer was dead, and 80%, 90% of VC funding was in B2B and a lot of SaaS. And now with this new platform, with this new technology, there's a window of opportunity to invest in consumer again. We can reimagine what the world might look like. I was a consumer guy through and through. that was my love of, as a founder. I would do more consumer if I could have in the last decade, but it was almost impossible to get funded. No one was doing consumer. And so I think as I'm thinking through Fund 2 and thinking through where we're going to invest, certainly more of what we have been doing. Within fintech, it's really financial inclusion, climate, and I'm leaning into exploring the idea of going back into consumer, because I do think James is right that the technology window is open to build a next great consumer company. I don't know how LPs will respond to that. Some will be like, great. And most of them will be like, I don't want to touch this. It's true of climate too. A lot of people don't want to touch climate, but I think we've never been at a more critical juncture. I just drove from LA to Santa Barbara. You can see the destruction. So many friends lost their houses and everything. It might not be in vogue right now, but it's critical that we're investing in these technologies.
So the job of an emerging manager, it's not all glitz and glamour. Like, you stay on couches when you travel, do every single IC job in the firm, from auditing, accounting, LP relations, sourcing, due diligence, deal making, passing, portfolio support, a lot of different hats. How do you keep all the ducks in a row? How do you make the trains run on time? How do you get the ship to stay on course?
I don't know if this is my personality, but I've always said this, and I say it without false humility. I'm bad at most shit in life. My friends have said they read something Marc Andreessen wrote about strategic incompetence, and they're like, this is Ethan, his whole life, just trying to get out of stuff by being bad at it. I don't try to be good at all the things. I try to be good at the things I'm good at. I don't try to be excellent at all the things as an emerging manager, especially as a solo GP. A lot of the things I do suck. I lean into the things I'm great at and delegate the things I'm not. AngelList has been a huge boon. They strip out so much work for me. They've been a huge asset. Shout out to AngelList. Maybe they'll give me a discount if you have widely distributed audience here. Who knows? No, I'm joking. They've been awesome. I've gotten comfortable leaving a lot of fires burning and not having your stuff look amazing. My website has a different domain than my email address. There's a lot of duct tape and bubble gum like that any startup. It's on a long list of things I need to do. I just wrote it down to a list of someone who's helping me with stuff. Well, it's been like that for 2 years. My domain has a dash in it. It's outside dash VC. It's embarrassing. You just have to be okay with it and know the things you are best at. I feel like I'm top 1% at those things. That's why we're going to win. I'm not going to win because I'm pretty good at a bunch of stuff. I'm going to win because I'm really good at a few things. I've tried to have no ego about all this crap I'm terrible at.
Get comfortable with fires burning, but what sort of piece of advice would you give to 2022 Ethan going into raising the first vehicle?
I was disappointed in myself. I knew all the tactics. I was a fundraising coach for 2 years. My favorite part of the job. We had 20 fundraising coaches. It was so fun to help these people. We were helping people raise money for their loved ones' medical expenses. Your son has cancer and your friend set up a page for you. And we were helping like these incredibly meaningful moments and helping them. And it was so fun. I knew the best tactics. When I went to raise, I told my friend I had no income, and my wife wasn't working at the time. She was off on maternity leave. So we had no income. And so all of the tactics I knew about how to create momentum and fundraise, I didn't employ. I was disappointed in myself. The biggest thing was being strong out of the gates, getting momentum. We'd always tell that to founders or crowdfunding platform campaigns. Find an anchor. Maybe that's advice you can't follow as a first fund. Like, there probably wasn't any anchor to back this. But if I had to tell myself anything again, it was ready, fire, aim. The first time, just running from the gates to start things. Because of my financial situation, I had to. But knowing what I knew about crowdfunding and strategy around fundraising, I would have slowed down a little bit and run a better process. It was a slog. It was more than it had to be. One thing I'll say is this, and this is something I'll tell emerging managers too. We fundraised for 18 months, right? It was a long time. And especially on a first fund, people are betting on you as a human, right? They don't need more data. They need a deadline. I raised for 18 months. I could have raised for 12 and a little bit less. Of the 180 LPs, 70 or 80 came in the last 60 days. They didn't need more data. They needed a deadline. Kickstarter had a rule. You can only have, I think, a 30-day campaign. Campaigns look like this. There's a huge spike in donations on crowdfunding campaigns on day 1, 2, 3. Nothing in the middle, and a huge spike at the end. And that's the same way that fundraising for a fund works as well. Huge spike at first close, huge spike at final close, not a whole lot going on in the middle. And so all that time in the middle, you're just wasting days and months that you could be doing other things. And so this next raise, I'm going to create real deadlines and not let things stretch out unnecessarily because people don't need more data. Here's what I think one of the more interesting things is that I went into Fund 1 with the idea of building a brand. And I don't think that's something most emerging managers or even it's on their radar. This outsider brand has really resonated even more than I anticipated. And the founders we're seeing now, sometimes I'm just like, why are you talking to me? This is a good tip for all emerging managers. Sometimes being better is better, and sometimes being different is better. And the founders that are talking to me that I have no business talking to, honestly, they should be talking to better, smarter VCs. They want to work with me because they think it would be fun to work with me versus I think Ethan is the smartest VC in the room. I remember as a founder, that's the way I approached it too. First round capital led our seed round. The reason I wanted to work with first round capital was not because they had invested in Uber and all sorts of unicorns and were like one of the best firms in the world, is because they made funny Christmas videos. These folks seem cool to work with. And I think founders, they have a lot less information than we think about who they work with. We'd be surprised at what drives their motivations. And so I've been shocked. The outside brand and this idea of outsiders deeply resonates with a lot of people. I didn't know. When I look at my DMs and LinkedIn, like I had no idea how deeply it was going to resonate. It's been working better than I anticipated in that regard. It's 100% authentic because I spent 2.5 years trying to fundraise straight from law school. My co-founder came from the nonprofit world. People were like, who are you guys? I think it comes from a place of having been there as an outsider, and it hits hard for a lot of people.
I'm a founder. I'm a quirky LP. I liked what you shared, and I'd love to get in touch. What's the best way to pin you down?
I am grossly addicted to my phone and email. I'm not hard to find. Ethan at outsideventurecapital.com. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. The only thing that's ever worked for me is being 100% me. You know, I remember being a founder and having to dress up a little bit. I wore the same brown sweater at every pitch meeting. Like in your 26, you're not as sure of yourself as you are as I am at 43. And even so now you think like, all right, I'm going to go pitch bigger investors. A lot of folks who went to Princeton and come from a different world. Do I have to try and be someone I'm not? And I think the only answer to that question is absolutely not. Plant your flag and you're going to attract the people you're going to attract and repel the people you're going to repel. So will my pitch work with a lot of institutionals as we get to more like Fund 3? I do still have fears, but I don't think changing who I am or what this fund is about is the way to get people who are aligned with how we're going to operate. Because they'll be surprised once they get in and they're getting a monthly email talking about cows jumping over cows and me texting with Sam Altman. So I don't want to surprise anyone. To show them, I put in my data room every email we've sent to LPs so they know how weird this is going to be if they decide to get on board. I like going on founder hikes too. I think you learn more about a person in a 3-hour hike than in a 30-minute Zoom. You get a lot deeper. You understand who they are, their motivations, and what's driving them, and how they think about the world. And so that is something I've really enjoyed doing. We went on 44 miles of founder hikes last year with our portfolio companies. If you can do them before you invest, even better. But after you invest, you dive deep, know who they are, and have a better opportunity to work with them on a more impactful way than you do from just the superficial.
Ethan, thank you so much. This was great. I love the hats.
Yeah.
Metaphorical and physical. And I'm sure there is more than just the pirate one. Thank you for giving us a piece of your morning, telling your story. I'm sure we're not going to be the last time we hear about you. And looking forward for our not so future soon to be hike all together.
You've just watched another episode of Slice, the podcast for emerging managers. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe to our Substack not to miss any future episodes. And special thanks to Nick Tippmann at TipTop VC for introducing us to Ethan. Lastly, if you have a friend going through fundraising struggles right now, definitely share this episode over because Ethan had a lot of great perspectives to share. And we will see you next time. Bye.